Of course you can have it all. Work a 70-hour-a-week corporate job,
raise 4 gifted and talented children, care for your aging parents, run a side business, and pen your best-selling novel on the weekends.
It's what the best writers do, right? Here's the truth. If writing really matters to you, at some point you have to make choices that reflect that. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm sharing the 5 biggest decisions that transformed my writing life. Stick around and I'll tell you how you can make your own writing life more joyful, more sane, and a lot more sustainable. We're told to fit writing in to our lives, to treat it like a hobby or a side hustle or something that we have to fit in with everything else that we're doing. And it's kind of like if we can't do that, we get these messages that make it seem like we're failing. But here's what I learned, that if you really want to write and you really want to become the best writer you can't be happy with just trying to fit writing in among everything else that you're doing. Once I started making decisions that supported my writing, rather than just trying to fit it into the cracks and little tiny spaces, if there were any, I became more focused, more fulfilled, and more successful too. So as I walk you through these 5 decisions, I invite you to think about the decisions you're making when it comes to your life and your writing. Which decisions have brought you closer to the writing life you want to have, and which ones have taken you farther away from it? Let's start with the first big shift I made. Way back when I was in my 20s, I had a job as a copywriter at a corporation. It required that I be in the office 9 to 10 hours a day. A lot of times I had to go in on the weekends. So much of my energy, both physical and mental, was devoted to this job that it was super difficult to try to fit the writing in when I went home amidst everything else that I was doing outside of the workplace. Something was going to have to change. And I think that's sometimes what we have to think about as writers. Instead of beating ourselves up, we have to say, okay, how can I make my life work so that I can still devote the time that I need to these writing dreams? The biggest decision I made was to leave that corporate job. I'm so glad I did. I would be so unhappy if I had stayed in that corporate job. I can't even imagine what it would have been like today. So if you're serious about writing, understand that fitting writing in can work to a certain point, but if you are drained by your job, then you have to ask yourself, how important is this writing dream to me? And maybe I need to look at how I might be able to shift how I'm supporting myself to make it work better with my writing. So that first decision gave me the foundation I needed to build my writing life. That was decision number 1. Let's talk about decision number 2. The second major decision I made was this, and I've questioned this looking back at it, but I think it was the right decision. Let me explain to you why. I decided to focus on one goal, and that was to get a traditional publishing contract. That's what I wanted more than anything. I was still working full-time. Even though I was no longer at the corporate job, I was freelance writing, so I still had to devote significant time and energy to not only working a freelance job, but to also building my freelance business. So it's not like I could do this and that and this and that. I had to focus on one thing. So that's one of the reasons why I decided, okay, I'm going to focus on writing the best novel I can possibly write. Eventually, that decision paid off, because I got that traditional publishing contract. And for me personally, that really was a launching point, because that seemed to me to be proof that I could do this thing. But I want to warn you, because when I was so focused on getting that first traditional publishing contract, there was something I wasn't doing, and that was building an author platform. The fact that I didn't have a platform hurt me in some ways. If you can start building your platform at the same time that you're practicing writing, that's the ideal approach, but the writing still has to come first. And if you're in a situation like I was, where you have room for one thing and there's no way that you can fit in writing and platform building, then I would say focus on the writing. You can have the best platform in the world, but then if readers go and read your book and they're like, then because the writing isn't there, or the storytelling isn't there, or the structure isn't there, then it's not going to matter. So in the end, if you can only focus on one thing, I would suggest doing what I did and just focusing on the writing. If you can do both, that is the best approach. The third decision I made that helped me build the writing life I have today. After my second book was published, I had a realization at that point, and that was that my current niche wasn't working. At the time, I wasn't connecting with readers. I was writing blogs, but nobody was reading them. Nothing was happening. I didn't sit down and analyze the market. I just followed my gut and combined two things that I really care about. One was writing and creativity, and the other was health and wellness, both mental and physical. And that's when I started Writing and Wellness, which has now been replaced with Master Writer Mindset. But that Writing and Wellness was my platform for many years. When you're trying to build a life that supports your writing, that's kind of built around your writing and your creativity, it's not just about the books. It's not just about the schedule and the time that you have. It's about finding a rhythm and a message that reflects who you really are. If you're thinking about it the right way, as you go, your life is going to become more and more about the creator that you are, which is going to help you expand and create even more and even better. It's exciting. It's really cool how it works. So this shift, realizing that I had the wrong niche and I needed to go into the right one, was another turning point in my life. Because when I changed that niche and I started trying Writing and Wellness, people started coming and reading the blog. I started getting traction. I started getting readers. I started getting subscribers. I could see that this new niche was working for me. So I was willing to follow what I was passionate about and what energized me, and that turned out to be a really good decision. So here's the lesson on this that you might want to think about for your own writing life. If something isn't working, if it's your niche or something in your platform isn't working or it doesn't feel right, don't keep just grinding it out. Think about how you can pivot. Think about where you want to go next in terms of your artistry and your creativity. And then just explore and combine things and see where it leads. Let's talk about my fourth big life decision. And this is another one that's a little bit controversial that I wouldn't necessarily tell other people to do, but let me explain what I did and why I did it and why it worked for me. The decision I made that went against the standard writing advice is that I changed genres. Now, at the time, I didn't do it purposefully. It's not like I was sitting there thinking, oh, okay, my writing life is going to be such and such, so at this point I must change genres. Nothing like that. It was just that that's what I felt like doing at that time. It just felt right to go into this other genre. The first book that I had published was an epic fantasy. The next story that turned out to be the one that I wanted to try to get published was a supernatural thriller, a huge departure from epic fantasy. Now, most experts in the writing industry will tell you pick a genre and stick with it. And there's a really good reason for this. If you pick a genre, say you want to pick romance or science fiction or whatever it is you're picking, and you write story after story after story in that genre, that's the best way to build an audience. Because if they read this book, they're going to like this book and they're going to like this book because you are writing to the same audience every time. If, like me, you write epic fantasy and then you turn around and publish a supernatural thriller, your epic fantasy readers are like, huh? What the heck? This isn't what I was expecting. And so you kind of have to go out and find a whole new batch of readers all over again. But here's the benefit to it. I don't think that we necessarily find our niche with our first book. Some of us do. I mean, some people, they write that first romance and they are off and running and they write romance happily for the rest of their lives. For a lot of us, though, I think we're very creative in nature and we kind of have to find where we fit. The more stories you write, the more you kind of find your voice. And for some of us, it just doesn't work to stay locked in one genre. If you're feeling boxed in or you're feeling like you're tired of this genre, then this might apply to you. So, did it slow things down for me in terms of audience building? It absolutely did. So I say this with that warning. It will slow down your audience building. But here's the other side of the coin. Now that I have published 8 books and I've delved into the epic fantasy, the supernatural thriller, the historical fantasy, and the nonfiction realms, I am gaining readers from all kinds of different areas. And so that is fun because then I'm not restricted. I don't have to feel like I need to write yet another epic fantasy to please the readers of my first novel, or I have to write yet another supernatural thriller to please the readers of my second and third novels. I have options, and I love that as a creator. That's what makes me feel alive, and that helps me continue to push myself to be better with the next book and the next book. I would just suggest you ask yourself what kind of writer you are. If you're someone who just loves one genre and you can write for the rest of your life in that genre, then absolutely go for it and do that. You will have an easier time of building an audience and retaining that audience as you put out book after book. And you'll probably be able to earn more money faster than what I did. But for me, my main priorities have never been money. My main priority has always been creatively centered. I always wanted to do what my artistic self wanted to do. And if you feel that way too, you really can't go wrong following your creative muse. Okay, so the last decision that I made was to publish my first nonfiction book. I never would have seen myself as a nonfiction writer, but here's what happened, and here's what can happen if you allow your creative artistic side to kind of take the lead. I decided to do that other niche I told you about, started writing in wellness, and pretty soon I had other writers who were subscribed to my newsletter asking questions. And within about a year or two, I realized that there was a need here for information. I wanted to deliver that. I wanted to help the people who were coming to me with these questions. I wrote my first book for writers, which was Overwhelmed Writer Rescue, and I thought about getting it traditionally published, but with nonfiction, you have to be willing to allow the publisher to have their input. So to tell you, maybe you take this part out, maybe you put this part in, maybe it should be more like this. And I knew what I wanted this book to be. And I realized that the best way to be able to retain that control and to be able to serve my audience best was to self-publish it. It was a decision that kind of gave me a whole nother side to my writing career. Because of that, I now have this whole other dimension. I'm not just a novelist, I'm also a nonfiction writer. And I love that because I can bounce back and forth. I can finish a novel and dive into the nonfiction book, finish the nonfiction book, dive into novel, or even work on them simultaneously. And that sort of work excites me. That sort of work energizes me. The message here is that you have to be open to what doors are kind of peeking open a little bit for you. If you see, a little bit of a light over here and you kind of want to explore that, I would say go do it. Because you never know what avenues it may take you down and how that could expand who you are as a creator. So all of this is kind of hoping to help you to think about building a life that reflects your creativity, building a life that becomes part of who you are as an artist. That you're not just trying to fit this artistry or this writing or this creativity into these little nooks and crannies in your already really busy life. The idea is to try to merge the two more closely, to have one feeding the other and vice versa. As I look back on these 5 decisions, I can see now that they were all about that. They were all about creating a situation that would allow me to become the artist that I wanted to become. I wanted to share that with you because maybe that can help you look at your writing life a little differently. If you feel like you are a creator, you are an artist, that is this huge part of who you are and what your purpose is here on this earth, then you will absolutely be very happy with making decisions in your life that support that help form a foundation so that part of yourself can continue to grow and expand and become more and more. Does that mean that, my life is smooth sailing now and everything is easy? Oh man, no way. Things are changing too fast in the publishing industry for that to be the case. But I'm so happy with my life. I'm like at this point, after all these years of making these decisions, I'm doing more and more and more today than I ever had before. My creativity is expanding in even more ways. That brings me a lot of joy and a lot of energy that then just feeds back into the creative stuff that I'm doing. So I'm not saying that making these decisions is going to give you the easy life or you're just going to, breeze through life. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm trying to say is if this is who you are and you want to be more of this, then making life decisions that support it, you will never regret those. So your mission of the week, if you choose to accept it, take just 15 minutes to reflect on your writing and your life as it is right now. And ask yourself this: is my life structured to support the kind of creative work I want to do? And if not, what one small shift could you make today or this week or this month to bring it more in line with who you are as a writer? Now I'd love to hear from you. What's one big decision you've made in your life, or maybe that you're thinking about making, that's helping you shape a writing life that's going to support the artist that you are? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear. And if this resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe. That'll help me to keep producing videos like this. And if you think it might help another writer, please do share it with them. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.